Welcome, everybody, to Innate Interviews. I'm your host, Dr. Haig John, and I'm very excited to have once again Dr. Simon Senzon. And I always gain so much knowledge and wisdom of chiropractic and our history and philosophy. I'm excited to have you back on. Welcome, Simon.
Thanks so much, Haig. It's so good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you. I mean, trying to keep up with you and all the awesome work that you're doing is not an easy job. I'm glad I joined TIC, your group, just recently again, and now I could stay in the know. So I really appreciate you, and I urge everybody to sign up for T. Is give me a website real quick.
Yeah, institutechiro.com.
There we go.
Yeah, easy.
So why don't you tell me a little bit, or all of us, a little bit of the new work that you've been doing?
Yeah, it's constant. We actually just released a new interview today, which was really nice with Chris Ramsey, who is the head of philosophy at New Zealand Chiropractic
Oh,
College.
cool.
And
Mm-hmm.
we're going live this week with integrating TIC curriculum into his classes, his philosophy 1 and philosophy 3. So that's our big new initiative at TIC. We're actually working with faculty at several different schools to really bring just, the latest philosophy ideas, the classical lectures, whatever we can, whatever the faculty really want. We're developing curriculum to support their courses.
Well, that's really amazing. And,
Yeah.
I created a curriculum for innate adjusting and putting that into a curriculum form for educators. It's not an easy task when you have such a large thing like chiropractic philosophy and history. And then you're just saying, gearing it towards the teacher themselves. That must have been a major undertaking.
Yeah, it's an ongoing project. Last semester, we rolled out with Life University in Philosophy 1.
Oh, is that
And
right?
yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah, really exciting. So the students were reading blogs at TIC. So what we did was I want the students, we really wanted to make it accessible. So we looked at what the students were getting each week and then tailored some videos from TIC because we've got
Oh, that's
hundreds of
good.
lectures
Mhm.
and not just from me but interviews I've done with people and also lots of archival stuff. So we'll take clips from the videos and then embed them into blogs. So the blog has its own topic and then it's filled with 2 or 3 short 1 to 3 minute clips for the students to just get the juice, and then they could go deeper if they want to. So it's a fun project.
That's a game changer right there. In,
Yeah.
in my, I remember, I think it was first or second quarter, we had our chiropractic philosophy. That was the class we had. We had a great teacher, but we got assignments to read this out of DD and some of that, and it wasn't very inspiring in reality. And just starting off and reading DD Palmer is not necessarily an easy thing to do in 1910 when
Yeah.
you don't know what's DD and what he's complaining about through most of that.
Right. Yeah. And you're totally with your podcast and your group with DD, you know that better than anybody. So you guys dive deep, one page at a time. It's amazing.
Yeah, sometimes one line at a time.
Right. Yeah. And that's what's powerful. And the other really amazing thing about TIC was we developed it as a social network. So it's not just a learning environment, it's a social network also. We're using Buddy Boss WordPress software, which is its own like Facebook.
Yeah.
So the vision is that there'll be more social dialogue happening, discourse, groups, chiropractors who are members interacting with students all over the world, students from different schools connecting with each other. So it's really a new social learning hub for the profession.
Wow.
Yeah.
That it's so relevant for now since we are getting lost a little bit in our philosophy and getting lost in our history of really what really is and what isn't. And I just had one of my students in Singapore just asked me about Speransky, And I also guided him towards the rational bacteriology, where it's sort of outlined by chiropractors, and where you're getting a good basis and understanding of what is the germ theory for a chiropractor. Speransky's not easy to read. So, when they did the rational bacteriology, I have the old copy from the 50s, I think it was, guiding them properly to find out their own answers is really wonderful. Thanks for doing that. I mean, I can't
Yeah.
wait to look at it.
Yeah, that's powerful. And we have on Tick one of R.J. Watkins' main proteges,
Hmm.
Steve Walton. He's a Tick member, and he's the author of the book we published a few years back called The Complete Chiropractor, which
Yeah.
includes whole sections from that book, Rational Bacteriology. Because Watkins, he was like, I did an interview a couple weeks ago about, and someone brought him up. The Chiropractic Foundations. We did a podcast, and he was a student of R.J. Watkins because when
Yeah.
Sid started life, he brought R.J. down to create the whole program, pretty much
Cool.
teach all the classes. So that's one of the things we're doing at Tick to just introduce people to those thought leaders that they might not know about. Not just the people that we love, like Reggie and Tom Gilardi and all the greats that we can get access to, but who were the guys that you never read about or learned about, like Jim Drain or Ratledge, or a lot of people have been asking me about Thurman Fleet lately, so
Yeah.
we'll have to do some stuff on that one of these days. And there's just so much we could talk about and learn about together. It's really fun.
Yeah. And, we call them obscure books or writings in chiropractic. They
Right.
shouldn't be obscure. And they are, maybe BJ had already passed at that point, and these writings are really still relevant. And then a lot of them did a lot of great research and, put these things in context that are really relevant for right now. And I'm so happy to hear that from you. And I love reading some of these books, and anything could cause anything, and lots of books out there that really need to be part of the reading curriculum for chiropractic school and students and practitioners as well.
Yeah, that would be great. And that book's a great example. It totally integrates Speransky into it. And Harper, who wrote that book, his intent was to present D.D. Palmer's theories for modern times
Yeah.
with the latest ideas of neurophysiology. So I'm hoping one of these days we could republish that one officially. I've
Yeah.
tried a few times. I've sent emails to 5 different presidents at Texas Chiropractic College. So I
That would be a good
believe,
one.
yeah, they have the copyrights. But yeah, that's a classic book.
Classic book. And here's another one from Werner, who also wrote
Oh
the
yeah,
Rational Bacteriology. And Robert Crystal, he had this republished for all of us at Self Center. We had this one, and this is the Science and Logic of Chiropractic. This is a reprint, not an original, but
right.
Pasquale signed this one for me.
Yeah. Yeah, Pasquale actually republished that one also, I think
Right.
back in the 80s or something. That book was considered when it came out the leading book in the profession on subluxation for decades. Because Werner not only integrated Speransky and Selye into that book,
Hmm.
but he discussed the difference between what they used to call the reflex techniques, which today we call tonal, which are the light
Oh, I
force
didn't know that.
techniques.
Hmm.
Yeah, because that's how they started, like Logan Basic. They really got that if you touch someone here, you're dealing with a reflex mechanism that's relating to subluxation patterns in the system. So that book talks about the what they called, I think, the cleavage techniques, which was more of the structural, and the
Hmm.
light force, which they called reflex techniques. And he felt that, just like Speransky, that the subluxation caused a pathophysiological cascade in the neurophysiology,
Hmm.
right? Which is really what we call dis-ease, right? It's a
Yeah.
pathophysiology that's cascading. And then he referred to that as sort of just he basically said this is what chiropractors are doing. You know, this thing that Speransky found, where the nervous system gets stuck in this neurodystrophic process. Chiropractors are disrupting the pattern in the nervous system so that the innate intelligence could express itself. So, I mean, these guys were writing in the 50s and 60s, and they were just really brilliant minds.
Truly brilliant. And, innate adjusting, that's what we've developed. And the research we're kind of doing right now is that the stretch receptor, when we contact or make that connection, how does that affect the neurophysiology? Because the stretch receptors, proprioception, everything towards the brain. So that's a little bit of the research we're digging up right now, which is kind of exciting. I'm having a
Yeah.
lot of fun with that.
Oh, good for you. I love that you're pushing it forward and working on research and papers and things. It's really great, man.
Well, thank you. My abstract just got accepted to the 44th annual Space Development Conference, International Space Development Conference at DC. So I'll be presenting my paper
Wow.
to non-chiropractors for the second time in the space industry. And, chiropractic needs to be, in the cosmos and beyond. And,
Love that. Yeah.
and if you think about the work that we're doing, it's light contact, but we also have to give it, we have to do the research and understand it because we're talking with, engineers and people and they want to know we're doing scientific research on
Yeah.
these things. And so that's really, it's coming to fruition. So I say chiropractic is going into the cosmos. And part of the deal is uploading the green books, if we go into space to bring that philosophy with us too. Maybe some of our podcasts together will go too.
Sounds good. Yeah, and we've got them all scanned now, digital, so it's easier than ever for
Beautiful.
people to access them. It's great.
Well, and none of these things add weight to a payload. You think of, a billions of dollars per gram or whatever it is to leave Earth. We can upload this and we can give it to Martians. We'll see.
I love
Well,
it.
now you've been doing some new work too, and we were talking about the last time you were on here, and you had some new research. Now you've published a few things. Why don't you fill us in some of the new stuff maybe that you've been working on that you can share?
Yeah, sure. Well, the new book is out. It came out last week, officially. It's called, let me get you a copy here. I might have to hold it in front of my face so you can read it. Oh, it's still blurry, huh?
Still blurring, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll read it to you.
Good.
The Forgotten History of D.D. Palmer's Chiropractic Disciples. That's the main title. And then the subtitle is Biographies of the First Students Who Transformed Chiropractic and Influenced Osteopathy, which was really crucial for us to put in there, which took a lot of effort for us to really feel like we had enough data to justify that claim that these first students influenced osteopathy, which is,
Instead of vice versa.
exactly. And we didn't know that when we started the research. Tim and Joe did all the digging for old newspapers, letters, business cards,
Wow.
advertisements, Palmer archives, behind the scenes, finding names in D.D. Palmer's ledger that nobody knew before was listed as a student who paid their $500. So we added a few people to the first students that no one knew before. We were able to develop a chronology of the first 23 students who came first and etc. And then one of the most astounding things we found was that many of these people were not only osteopaths before they came, or medical doctors or homeopaths, but many of them went and taught at osteopathic schools
Wow.
after they learned D.D. Palmer's thrust. So they actually taught his unique maneuver, the quick thrust, to the osteopaths because none of the osteopathic literature up to that point had that maneuver in the discourse. And we know that especially because A.P. Davis, who was one of the first students, I think he was eighth student, he studied with Still. before he met Dee Dee. He was in Still's first class, and he wrote the first illustrated textbook of osteopathy,
Wow.
which came out pretty much right before he met Dee Dee Palmer. And he listed 77 moves. And Dee Dee Palmer's thrust was not in there, and nothing like it
Mhm.
was in there. So that's just one of the evidence. There's lots of evidence we found, but it's really fascinating because, you know, Dee Dee Palmer was always accused of stealing from
Oh,
the
yes.
osteopaths. And what we've shown is, you know, I mean, he may have gotten influenced by osteopathy. He was certainly reading everything, but his unique thrust, the unique chiropractic maneuver, he invented it, and his disciples spread that to the osteopathic profession, where after a few years, it just became part of one of the moves in osteopathy.
That's spectacular. That's a big find. And, to going through those little bits of minutia, I mean, we have to give you guys, everybody, just so much credit for that. Because personally, I've gone to the Wikipedia, put in chiropractic. I've changed Wikipedia probably 15 times till I give up because it gets changed right back that it's been taken from osteopathy, which is a complete made up thing. And now you've really proven that. And
Yeah.
that's exciting. And I want to just say thank you to you and Joe and everybody that's done all that amazing research.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. It's really been amazing to do. And yeah. And you know, there's even like if you go on YouTube, there's a lecture from a historian at the A.T. Still University talking about D.D. Palmer stealing it. You know, I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
just part of their education, basically. And it's
Yeah,
just a belief that is not founded in facts. And now
yeah.
we're introducing new facts. So I wanted to make sure that osteopathy was in our subtitle. So people on Amazon, it's going to pop up, and someone's looking for an osteopathy book. They're going to
Yeah.
get the forgotten history of D.D. Palmer's disciples.
I love genius. That
Yeah.
is smart. I love that. That's a great idea because then it becomes part of the algorithm at that point.
Totally. Yeah. And it's important. And yeah, there's lots of things we found in there. I was able to take some of my research skills that I got doing my PhD. So I did my PhD in social science, and I was able to really learn how to study how ideas spread in social groups, like teacher to student, like D.D. Palmer to his students.
Yeah.
Like there's software you can do and algorithms you could build to really understand that. So we did. I was like, hey guys, let's do one of the final chapters since we have all this data now of not only who was Dee Dee's students, but who were their students. A lot of them, anyway. Some of them, you know, it's limited what we can actually find, but we
Hmm.
do have a lot of data. So we created a spreadsheet and we set it up the way that I had learned how to set it up to feed it into the algorithm so it
Hmm.
could generate these graphs to show
Yeah.
the spread of the ideas over time. So we were able to really look at some interesting things. And one of them was Julia Bowman, who was the first female chiropractor. She moved to Minnesota, to Minneapolis, and started teaching it because Dee Dee wrote on their diplomas, the first 23,
Right.
practice and teach.
Hmm.
You know, probably we think he did that so they could recoup their $500, you know,
Hmm.
because if they could
All right.
teach it, you're not going to get that much from patients, but from teaching it, you're going to get your money back.
Oh, interesting.
So they started doing it and they went
Hmm.
out and they started teaching, and it was really unique because she spelled chiropractic with an E at the end on her business card. So it's
Oh,
chiropractice, right? Like
interesting.
practice,
Hmm.
chiropractic, I guess.
Hmm.
And so you could see the people that she taught, that's how they advertised it. So it's one way
Ah.
to know for sure that these were her students, right? And
Mm.
a lot of these guys were osteopaths.
Hmm.
Minneapolis was also a hub for the osteopathic explosion during that time period.
Okay.
So she graduated, you know, she was one of the first graduates, but by like 1905, there was like 100 chiropractors in Minneapolis, you know, who were people who
Hmm.
she taught, and then their students who they taught, and their students who they taught, because
Yeah.
everyone was like, oh, I could teach. Yeah, okay, great. I just learned that. I'm gonna go teach it next door and make $50, you know. So it just,
Yeah.
and then they all called themselves chiropractors, you know. So from the start, you know, the profession was totally fragmented with people who were
That's right.
medical doctors, who were osteopaths, who were homeopaths, also plumbers and postmen and farmers, but they would go out and teach it, and they would teach it through their own lens, you know,
Hmm.
how they viewed the world, how they wanted to bring it, which D.D. Palmer didn't really like.
Yeah. And I think that's why, just as you're saying that, I'm thinking early 1900s, and then 1910, he comes out with a chiropractor's adjuster, right?
Right. Yeah.
And, relating to all these writings that very likely were the students maybe of other people, and getting them back on track. Right now in this podcast, in Synapse, we're on page 896, and the chapter's ambiguity. So I'm excited to start that one because it's probably how ambiguous, they're teaching different things of let's get you back on true north. And this is what chiropractic is in
Yeah.
1910.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was really, by that point, he was really, you know, trying to, you know, keep some semblance of control to his child that he birthed, right?
Yeah,
That's how he looked at it, you
sure.
know. And a lot of the, you know, a lot of the guys he's critiquing in that book, some of them were these early students like Davis, like
Mhm.
O.G. Smith, like Langworthy, B.J. Palmer. Those were sort of the big four that he
Yeah.
critiqued, and Carver also. But Carver was a student of a student at that point.
Hmm.
But out of the first 23, some of those guys were still being criticized because, you know, Didi had moved. He and BJ split up, and that was another big thing that we got from this research. We learned a lot about BJ Palmer. The chapter on BJ is really my favorite. That and the chapter
Okay.
on Langworthy. You know, I wasn't expecting to find so much about BJ when we dove in, and then we went deeper. And it was, our process would be like Joe and Tim would do all this research and dump it all into these files, and maybe craft a chapter sort of template, and then I would dive in and look at all of the data they collected, and then sort of craft it into a more chapter like, and go a little deeper, find some other research, then bring it back to them. And you know, it was like a 5 year process right, to get it to this point. But the BJ stuff, one thing we learned, we kind of debunked quite a few myths. You know,
Okay.
one was, you know, there's this myth that, you know, in 1902, D.D. Palmer just left town. And the
Hmm.
way I was taught at Sherman back in the day in the 90s was he left BJ with the sheets and moved to California, and nobody really knows why. He left him with a lot of debt. And, you know, it was just kind of a mystery.
Same narrative we've all kind of gotten, actually,
Right,
right?
right.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, because that's what I think that's what Gilo wrote about in his
Mm,
bio on Didi, the old dad Cairo. Because back
right.
then in the 80s, when that book came out, we didn't know this much, right? We didn't have digital archives of letters and
Awesome.
newspapers and
Hmm.
ads, right? So we know so much now about, we don't know everything, but we know a lot. So really what happened was they had their very first reunion in January 1902, and that's that classic picture. And we put one of those pictures on the cover where Dee Dee's sitting there with BJ behind him, and O.G. Smith and Davis and Langworthy and Sutton and Jones. They did a photo shoot, and he BJ had just graduated, so we decided to place BJ, I think, as number 22 on the
Hmm.
list. I should double check, so I'm giving you guys the right numbers. So BJ had just graduated, and he we've got the master list here. I think we made BJ. Yeah, I should know it by heart. Yeah, number 22. Even though he'd been studying since day one, right?
Hmm.
Basically, he'd been there since the first adjustments. He even, there's even some data that he was when he was like 16, 17, he was working on people in the clinic, right?
Hmm.
But it's very, we don't
Is
have
that
a
right?
lot on that.
Hmm.
So we wanted to number people, like what order they were actually disciples of DD, like matriculated into his school
Hmm.
based on matriculation dates, if we could get
Hmm.
them. Because DD wrote in his ledger, student $500, right? So we really have a lot of that data.
That's
But
great.
BJ, the only thing we had about BJ was at the end of 1901, O.G. Smith, we have his journals from the time period, and there's a wonderful book called The Chiropractor's Protege,
Hmm.
which Tim wrote, which is based on O.G.'s journals from back then. And
Okay.
Smith, he wrote, "I'm coming back to do some postgraduate study. Me and BJ are going to study together." So
Cool.
that was like December 1901. So we
Mm.
figured, all right, let's make that BJ's official, where he formally studied. He actually formally took a class. He wasn't just secretary and in the background, because he was
Right.
signing people's diplomas at 16 as the
Wow.
secretary of the school, right? So
Hmm.
so now he's officially studying, but
Hmm.
what we really got was that this was part of the plan. So BJ was given his diploma at this reunion in January 1902, and there were plans discussed at this meeting. And one of the plans was Didi was going to leave. He was going to go open another school, maybe out
Ah.
east. And it looks like his 10-year lease was up at the whole floor of this giant building. And
Hmm.
Didi, I think, was just done with having a lease over his head. He signed a 10-year lease in 1892, and he was like, all right, I'm moving on. so
Woohoo. Yeah.
so they said he set it up so that BJ would take over, and then if he wanted to come out and join him in California, he could, or BJ decided he's going to stay there and give it a go. So there
Hmm.
were a lot of debts, and there was lots going on that Didi left him with. But it was an orchestrated plan where Didi gave BJ the diploma, and then BJ went off to practice for a few months on his own. He got some experience, and he was listing himself then as faculty. And then they started advertising in like May and June, and then Didi left in June. So
Hmm.
the story Didi tells was that he went out to California to look for Tom Story, his student, who like just disappeared one night, um, had a case of insanity, and lost his mind, and nobody knew where he was. And Didi got some letters from him from California and went to find him. But that's the story that's been passed down through generations, that Didi went to California to find the student, but he brought a trainload of stuff when he went out there, right? He brought all his furniture, he brought all his bone collection, he brought his adjusting table.
You
He
wouldn't do that just to go search for somebody.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right,
Mhm.
right. He opened up a practice, and when he found Story, he brought him in, laid him on the table, adjusted his C1, and Story went, "How did I get here? Where have I been? What's going on?" And Didi wrote it as a cure for insanity. That's how he wrote the story.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
that's a whole nother interesting piece. So it's just, the book's just filled with cool stuff like that. It's really been really a fun project.
That's fantastic. I mean, it sounds, 5 years is like the drop in the bucket in reality doing that research. It sounds like it's accumulation really of all the research you've done and then finite, focusing on DD in that time and then the students of the day. I can't wait to look at that. That's really exciting stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it's been a good project, and people will find some nice surprises in there, things they never knew, a lot of things.
Well, you just let us in on a couple of them that
Yeah,
I never knew, and
right.
that's interesting stuff. You know, Going back to Tick a little bit, why don't you tell us about really, the brainchild behind that, and really what have you done now? It's been a few years. How long have you been running Tick?
Yeah. Well, Tick, really, it started about 10 years ago. We
Hmm.
started the Institute. we transformed my old website, which was called philosophyofchiropractic.com,
Hmm.
which just housed my blog and just thousands of free PDFs I used to put up for the profession. And then it evolved into Tick and I started doing online CE programs. So I had a few different websites with CE and the blog and the books. So we just decided let's consolidate it all in one place and make
Good
it,
idea.
make it an exclusive place just for the profession. So I took my blogs off of the public view and just put them behind the membership
Hmm.
only area. And I'll post some of them, on Facebook or something, or I'll post
Hmm.
some of the good videos. But the idea was let's create a place where, that's professional, right? Where
Yes.
we could just talk philosophy and history and talk chiropractic stuff without having to worry about the whole world reading it and being on it, and a place where chiropractors can have a discussion with each other. So a couple years ago, we really had the idea to turn it into a social network with an app. So that's
Hmm.
been a really powerful process. So we used a company that has their own social app. So it integrates with, this whole learning environment and this social environment where people could actually chat with each other,
Wow.
comment on each other's threads, comment on any of the blogs or courses, and start discussions. It hasn't really taken off as a social space
Hmm.
yet, but I'm guessing as we grow, that'll just happen organically. So I'm just kind of just putting out the content and trying to figure out how to, you know, run a social network, right? Which is kind of hard and new. So, I'm just hoping that that piece will start to evolve. but but the process has been to just put up all of my old courses. Sherman College has been really gracious over the years with allowing me to post anything from their archives, like old lectures. So I've got all kinds of stuff from, Reggie Gold, Tom Gilardi, lectures that have happened there, courses. I also, Arnaud and I connected at Lyceum several years ago, and he asked me if I would house all of his old lectures at TIC as kind of an archive.
Hmm.
So I went out to Mile High that year, and he sent someone with 3 boxes of DVDs and videotapes. So I've been slowly putting up the Arnaud archives, which is really just a blessing. I haven't gotten
That's
to the
awesome.
yeah, I haven't gotten to the videos yet, but those are on the list.
I
So
I taught MLS with Arno
you
for a
did,
number of
yeah,
years, almost 10
yeah,
years, and he's a
yeah,
dear friend. God bless him.
yeah, yeah. It's been really a gift to be able to go through those, and some of them I'm able to remaster the sound a little bit. That
Hmm.
just they're not all recorded, great. Some of them are old talks that he gave for ICPA back in the '80s, and
Hmm.
it's really been a powerful process. And so I've got lots of archives like that we've been putting up, and then I started doing some interview series, sort of like a podcast, but with sort of like, I was thinking of it sort of like different channels on our station. So one
Hmm.
that I started doing was called Tick Ideas, where I would interview some old timers who've been around for a while over 2 hours. The first hour, they'd tell me their story, their chiropractic story. And then the second hour, we'd either keep talking about that or they'd teach me something.
Hmm.
So I've got a couple dozen of those. I started another series called Philosophy and Practice, which you did one with me, which was
Hmm.
great, which are just
Yep.
these 30-minute segments on how people are bringing philosophy into practice. And
Hmm.
this year I started a new one, which I'm just calling Tick Dialogues, which I'm focusing more on faculty at schools. So I
That's
did
great.
one with Chris Kent already this year, and I just posted this one with Chris Ramsey. Um, I've got another one we just did on integral, bringing Ken Wilber's ideas into chiropractic, which is a big passion of Tick, and kind of like the behind the scenes philosophical perspective that Tick
Mhm.
utilizes. So I interviewed Nimrod Mueller, who's a good friend. He's an expert also in chiropractic and integral. So we did a dialogue a couple weeks ago. So there's so much content. I think we're up to almost 1,000 videos on Tick
That's
itself.
incredible.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to find these things on YouTube nowadays. I used to
Right.
be able to find stuff easily, and now it just seems it's difficult. Like we found some with Herbert Ross Reaver. Now it's hard to find them. I can't. I've looked and looked and looked, or it's page 1,000 out of a search or something.
Right.
So I'm so
Yeah.
glad you're creating that archive. That's so
Yeah.
valuable. It's for
Yeah.
students and practitioners, right?
Sure. Yeah, and for Reaver, we've got two things on Reaver. One is a page of some interviews, and another one is an interview that Tom Gilardi did with Reaver back in the 90s, which is
Mm-hmm.
really powerful. So I've got some of those. Tom did a whole bunch of these great interviews with some old timers, with Bud Crowder, and they're just so good.
That's awesome. I think Reaver. There was two that he did also. I think it was with Sigafus.
Oh,
Maybe
really?
Sig.
I haven't seen those.
Those are the ones I've been looking for, as a matter of
Okay.
fact.
All right. I'll keep my eye out. Yeah.
You mentioned something about a game that you created.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
That was a few months ago. You messaged me about it, and I'm so curious about it. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the tick game. I started this initially for the students because we were looking at ways that we could ensure the students could track their progress and
Mm-hmm.
that faculty could have some ways to know that the students were doing their homework, not just with
Right.
quizzes. And so we thought let's create a game where people could earn points based on the things they do. But like everything at Tick, we want to make sure it's congruent with the philosophy and the terminology of chiropractic. So, like for example, the homepage at Tick is called Lyceum. The blogs are called Impulses. So we try to make the whole site really congruent and feel
Mm-hmm.
like you're in a culture of chiropractic. So the
Mm-hmm.
game, I set it up based on the normal complete cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So we
Yeah.
wanted people not just to have a journey, but sort of a philosophical progression where they
Mm-hmm.
kind of move through the cycle. So instead of points, they're earning faux runs, and a faux run is a unit of force. Stevenson writes about those. It's a term
Yeah.
B.J. Palmer made up back in 1909 to
Okay.
capture. I've got some cool lectures on the faux run. So we structured it, and I talked with my kids when I was building this too, because they're gamers, and they were like, "Oh, Dad, you need a lot more points to get
Yeah.
badges. You got to do it like this." So I had some good feedback from people in the
Smart.
know, yeah, which
Yeah.
is really good, right? So everyone starts at level 1, universal intelligence, and you have to make your way through the 31 steps of the normal complete cycle. So there's levels, which is 31 levels, and then there's different kinds of badges you could earn. And the
Mm-hmm.
badges are based on the simple cycle. So you can get a creation badge, which is when you're creating content, you earn those certain kind of points. If you post on your timeline or if you respond to some discussion or comment on a blog or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then transmission points are when you're actually transmitting knowledge, right? If you even just go read some of the blogs, you can get transmission points. And um, then there's the sort of intersubjective level, which is the expression, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this is when you're not just replying to like a blog or a course, but you're replying to someone else's comment. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a different level of badge you can get. So the
That's
idea was, yeah, let's kind of make sure that we're getting a subjective, objective, and an intersubjective dimension, right? So
mm-hmm.
people can really go deep in understanding in their experience there.
Mm-hmm. And that's so important now for making it, a modern interface, right? You're creating things that, a lot of the kids, they've done half of their college while they were in high school, a couple of years in college, and then they're in graduate school. That's the interface that they've probably grown up with. we did the same thing with, I'm about to release this one soon, is Dee Dee's 1914. I had a professional actor read, the book and have it on MP3. So we can listen to it properly spoken instead of me doing it, and putting as many of these as we can into like a format where we can just listen to it as a blog or MP3. I've also done Fame and Fortune. We tried it. We haven't done 1910 yet. But part of the reason of doing Synapse Philosophy, that podcast, is that if you want to take out the discussion, eventually we can just run that through AI somehow and just take the readings out, because we read first, then we break it down and discuss it. So it's spoken out into the universe, recorded, and we can have that as an MP3, or have it, as an audio file where we can listen to these green books, and we can listen to Dee Dee and your work too. I mean, absolutely incredible stuff, because a lot of people aren't reading; they're listening now, right? With
Yeah,
Audible
true.
and all that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's brilliant. I'm so glad that you've done that. That's some real effort. I love it.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll be releasing that soon, and we're really working on Spanish and Portuguese as well, because chiropractic is thriving in South America and Mexico, and
Yeah.
really seeing them blossom, and then having the philosophy right there, the green books we can listen to or read, because we've translated also 1914 into Spanish and Portuguese as well, written. We haven't done the audio yet. And
Beautiful. Yeah.
I'm planning a seminar in Sao Paulo this summer, and being able to distribute that and getting our philosophy out there, and really, not that it's secondhand through a professor, but really you can go in and dive deeper, and the professors can also get that juice as well. And you've also created a lot of that for our teaching staff, which is absolutely incredible. They need as much support as possible. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's one of our long-term goals, to develop really good subtitles in different languages on all of those 900 courses on TIC. It's just, some people just don't have time to listen, but they could scroll it on their phone and read,
Yeah.
right? And that's
Both.
just, yeah, it's like a combination. So but we're working on that in multiple languages, and it's just powerful to get it out to the world, these
Yeah.
ideas. That's really great.
Well, I, we have so much to talk about. We really maybe need to do another podcast in the near future, on the next project. What's the next thing on the list that you might be working on for the future?
Yeah. Well, I'm working on the papers. That's my
Yeah.
next phase of
Hmm.
I did this massive PhD thesis. I finished it a couple years ago now, going on almost 4 years. Um, but the goal was to publish the results in peer review, and I just haven't had the time or the focus to be able to make that happen. So
Hmm.
that's one of my big goals for this year, to translate that. Um, our rollout with the schools is a big focus,
Those are
and
tremendous things.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's really big. We're really hoping for integrating TIC at 5 to 7 schools in the coming year,
Hmm.
worldwide, which is phenomenal. And um and
Phenomenal.
and the book series, there's a couple books in the works. One that I'm working on, one of them I can't talk about yet, but another one I'm working on is the 20th anniversary edition of my D.D. Palmer book, The Secret History,
Hmm.
which came out in 2006. It's the secret history of D.D. Palmer's, and it was more of like, it was a model of my first book, where I took out D.D. Palmer's more spiritual writings and
Yeah.
put them into a context. But since then, I've learned so much about the history,
Hmm.
especially about like the role of Langworthy and the Morokubo trial. And there's so many nuances that I actually took that book off the market a few years ago with this intent to really sit down with it and do a new edition. So that's what I'm hoping for, that for the fall.
That's spectacular. And a lot of my reasoning for really digging into DD's 1910 is to get really more of an understanding of his spiritual intention. And because it's absolutely misconstrued by a lot of speakers and people that talk about our philosophy. And I wanted to know. So that is, I forgot about that book. Thank you for reminding me, and I'm excited about the new one coming out because the spiritual writing, we can talk about the mechanistic and the vitalistic, but when we really get into the spiritualistic, all of that kind of encompasses itself together. If we want to look at it in that sense, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And that actually reminds me, just short, there's one of my big discoveries in the BJ Palmer chapter of the new book was, you know, a lot of people are aware that BJ studied with a traveling hypnotist in his
Hmm.
youth. Have you heard
I
about
didn't know
that?
that one. No.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Lerner, who wrote about him in the 50s and interviewed BJ's staff at the time, one of BJ's staff, Hender, had said that you can't really understand BJ unless you understand the post hypnotic personality.
Mm.
Because when BJ was a teen, we always thought it was when he was a teen. He said in one of his books that his dad sent him on tour with this traveling hypnotist, Professor Flint, who would put him up on the stage and put him into such a deep trance that he was able to break a stone across his chest with BJ laying across two chairs with a hammer,
Oh my gosh.
which is a really weird, obscure story. But doing research over the years, not only have I found an actual promotional photo of Flint and his daughter breaking a
Wow.
stone on somebody laying
Yeah.
across two chairs,
Hmm.
but the history about that, we always assumed it was when he was like 18, 19, like late teens.
Hmm.
But I dove deep into all of the newspapers in Davenport to see
Hmm.
when Flint actually came through. And he came through Davenport several times. And when BJ was 18, 19, he was there, but there was another young man that he had up on the stage as his demo. So first I thought, well, maybe BJ made it up and saw this other kid up there. He liked to make up some cool stories
Hmm.
once in a while.
Hmm.
But then I looked even further, and Flint had come through town in 1893 when BJ was 12.
Hmm.
And the newspaper says they put a frail, petite 12-year-old boy across two chairs. And he was in such a deep cataleptic hypnotic trance that they were able to stand on top of him.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
That's in the newspaper. And then in other shows of that tour, he was breaking the stone on people's
Hmm.
chests with the hammer.
Hmm.
So this research really suggests that at a very early age, BJ Palmer was put into such deep hypnotic states that it completely transformed him as a human being for the rest of
Yeah.
his life. You know,
That's an incredible find. That
yeah,
really is.
yeah,
'Cause last time we spoke, you were talking about you were reading BJ's book while you were in school, and then the professor said, "Well, that's when BJ went crazy or something."
right, right,
So
right, yeah, yeah,
now we're
yeah,
going back to 12 years old, and that's formative. I mean, that is something
right,
to
right,
shape your future,
right,
especially as a impressionable 12-year-old. My
right.
daughter's 11. She's already, she gets a lot of chiropractic philosophy, and she's probably one of my best adjusters right now. But
Nice.
well, that's
Nice.
an incredible find. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, so it's the history just goes deep. The philosophy is even deeper, and the more people learn, the better it gets, I find.
Do we have any dates where we have Simon Senzon live anywhere? Where can we
Yeah.
see you, or what's going on?
Yeah, actually I'll be actually this week I'm doing a course, a Zoom course for Life West, which will be fun, and a live course in on Zoom in France tomorrow. But on March 6th, I'll be at the New Mexico Chiropractors in Albuquerque that weekend of yeah, March 7th I'm speaking. And then the following week, March 14th, I'll be speaking for the New York Chiropractic Council at their Niagara Falls Lyceum, their spring lyceum. So, and
That's
then
gonna
at
be great.
IRAPS, I'll be presenting this idea of the history of European chiropractic at IRAPS at Sherman's Lyceum. So 3 dates already this year.
That's great. That's great. Well, I'm going to give a plug for Innate Newborn is going to be April 25th at Life University, and this is going to be a certification class. We had to postpone Sherman because of the massive amount of snow they had. Was it last weekend or the weekend before I was supposed to
Yeah.
be there? And so we're postponing that. So, but now we are going to be at Life University April 25th. We can't postpone that. It's 25th and 26th. So we're going to
Excellent.
have our full seminar. More dates to come. Dr. Simon Senzon, thank you so much for joining me today. We just had 50 plus minutes, almost an hour, and it felt like, it just flew by. I get so much out of just hanging out and talking to you, and I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Good to see you, Haig. Thanks for having me.
We'll do it again sometime soon. Thanks, everybody, for joining us at Innate Interviews. Have a glorious day, and we'll see you soon.